Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Naila Shuja and these are the headlines. U.S. President-elect Joe Biden says nothing will stop the transfer of power in the government. Speaking in Delaware, Biden termed Donald Trump's refusal to concede defeat in the election an embarrassment. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says there will be a smooth transition to a second Trump administration. The United States has registered record daily COVID-19 infections of over 200,000 as the caseload tops 10.2 million with over 239,000 deaths. India reports 512 deaths and over 44,000 infections in a day as the caseload tops 8.6 million. Pakistan has recorded over 700 cases, 21 deaths, taking the country's toll to 7,021. The global coronavirus infections have topped 51 million with over 1.27 million deaths. The UN General Assembly's first committee has adopted Pakistan's 3 draft resolutions with overwhelming support. Pakistan's United Nations mission says 2 resolutions are on regional disarmament and conventional arms control, while the 3rd is on confidence-building measures in the regional and sub-regional context. China's video-sharing app TikTok says it has filed a petition against U.S. President Donald Trump's ban order. The company says the order has been challenged in a U.S. appeals court as it faces imminent Thursday deadline. President Trump said in an August 14 order directed the app owner's ByteDance to divert TikTok within 90 days. Directed the app owner's ByteDance to divert TikTok within 90 days. For news in detail, stay tuned. We'll be right back after a short break. Welcome back. U.S. President Donald Trump is doing everything he can to obstruct and delay the transition of President-elect Joe Biden to the White House, while Biden says nothing will stop the transfer of power in the government. With Donald Trump and his administration refusing to concede defeat in the November 3rd presidential election and President-elect Joe Biden pushing ahead with forming a new cabinet, the Trump to Biden power transition has the making of a rough road ahead. Speaking in Delaware, Biden termed Donald Trump's refusal to concede defeat in the election an embarrassment.
We are already beginning the transition. We're well underway. And the ability for the administration in any way by failure to recognize this our win does not change the dynamic at all in what we're able to do. And nothing's going to stop that. And so I'm confident that the fact that they're not willing to acknowledge we won at this point is not of much consequence in our planning and what we're able to do between now and January 20th.
Meanwhile, the Trump campaign is filing a lawsuit challenging the election results in Michigan. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has dismissed the probability of a Biden presidency.
There will be a smooth transition to a second Trump administration. All right, we're ready. The world is watching what's taking place here. We're going to count all the votes. When the process is complete, there'll be electors selected. There's a process. The Constitution lays it out pretty clearly.
Pompeo is due to visit France, Turkey, Georgia, Israel, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE from Friday. He said he was reminding everyone that all votes have not yet been counted. The United States has imposed Iran-related sanctions on 6 companies and 4 people. Washington has accused the network of supplying sensitive goods to an Iranian military firm. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin said Tehran uses a global network of companies to advance its destabilizing military capabilities. In a statement, he said the United States will continue to take action against those supporting the regime's militarization efforts. Meanwhile, Iranian President Hassan Rouhani said the U.S. elections results show Americans opposing current wrong policies. The United States has approved the sale of 50 F-35 jets to the UAE. The sale of 18 unmanned aerial drones and a huge cache of munition has also been ratified. In a statement, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said the defense equipment is worth over $23 billion. He said the move is in recognition of deepening ties with the UAE and its need for enhancing defense capabilities. But the lawmakers will review the weapons sale before the State Department sends a formal notification to the legislative branch. Turkey says it expects issues poisoning ties with the United States will be addressed. Turkish Foreign Minister says the search for solutions to conflict in Syria and Libya presents new opportunities to improve ties. Speaking in Ankara, Mevlut Kavusoglu said the purchase of the Russian S-400 systems was already done. He added Turkey's removal from the U.S. F-35 program will negatively impact NATO's defense strategy. The U.S. and Turkey have been at odds over policy difference in Syria and Ankara's purchase of Russian missile defense. The UN General Assembly's First Committee has adopted Pakistan's three-draft resolution with overwhelming support. First Secretary of the Pakistani mission, John Zaib Khan, introduced the resolutions. Pakistan's UN mission says two resolutions are on regional disarmament and conventional arms control, while the third is on confidence-building measures in the regional and sub-regional context. The draft on conventional arms control was adopted by the strong support of 159 votes. Only India voted against it. The committee adopted the proposals on regional disarmament, confidence-building measures, and nuclear non-proliferation. Iran's foreign affairs is in Islamabad, heading a high-level delegation to expand ties between the two neighboring countries. Iranian embassies in Pakistan said Zarif is set to discuss regional and global issues with Pakistan's Prime Minister, Foreign Minister, and the Army Chief. It said the policy of the neighbors first between Tehran and Islamabad has always been the hallmark of bilateral ties. It said the two nations are inseparable. France's President Emmanuel Macron says the threat of terrorism needs to have a coordinated and quick response from the European Union. Speaking in Paris during a virtual meeting with the EU leaders on security, Macron said Europe must rethink its open border policy. He added the right to asylum should not be slashed, but implemented in a better way to protect the EU's outer borders. German Chancellor Angela Merkel said it is vital to know who comes and leaves through the Schengen area, while Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte said the Netherlands stands ready to work with the EU partners to protect the bloc's core values. The meeting comes after deadly attacks in France and Austria in recent weeks. The United Kingdom has expelled 2 Belarusian diplomats in a tit-for-tat move. Earlier, Minsk declared 2 British diplomats persona non grata, citing what it called destructive nature of their activities. In a statement, the British Foreign Secretary said London has sent a clear message to Belarus that unjustified expulsion has consequences. Dominic Raab said the United Kingdom will continue to hold the Belarusian authorities to account for the rigged election in August. He said London will not stop speaking about the despicable violence against the Belarusian people. Ethiopia says its military have killed 550 extremists in the northern Tigray region. State media said another 29 members of the Tigray Special Forces and militia have surrendered in the rest of northern region. It also said Ethiopia has arrested 17 of its military officers for disrupting communication systems. The state media added officers exposed the federal forces in Tigray. Earlier, Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed said the end of military operations in Tigray is coming within reach. He said operations against the Tigray People Liberation Front are proceeding as planned. The premier's remarks came as the African Union called for an immediate ceasefire. Thousands of Ethiopians have already fled the violence into neighboring Sudan. Libya's 5+5 Joint Military Commission is discussing ways to ensure the implementation of Geneva's ceasefire agreement. UN mission in Libya says the delegates are holding the 6th meeting in Sitre to discuss the progress achieved since last week's talks. In a tweet, the mission said it expects the stakeholders to finalize the implementation mechanism and form subcommittees. Meanwhile, the Libyan Political Dialogue Forum, chaired by the UN's mission acting head, Stephanie Williams, is also underway in Tunisia. The dialogue, following months of consultations, is mulling the draft roadmap for elections and new political order in Libya. Addressing the forum, Williams said the United Nations is taking confident steps to Libyans' homeland sovereignty and their wealth. Libya's ceasefire agreement was signed in Geneva on the 23rd of October between the country's two main warring sides. Israel's parliament Knesset has approved the normalization agreement Abraham Accords with Bahrain. Israeli state media says 62 out of 120 lawmakers voted in favor, while 14 voted against the deal. It said the agreement is expected to be brought into the cabinet for a final vote in the next few days. Earlier, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said normalization ties with Bahrain will contribute positively to Israel's economy. In a speech in the parliament, he said Tel Aviv will now be able to connect oil pipelines from the Persian Gulf to Israel and to Europe. The UAE and Bahrain were the first Gulf states to establish formal diplomatic relations with Israel. It's now time for a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. The United States has registered record daily COVID-19 infections of over 200,000 as the caseload tops 10.2 million with over 239,000 deaths. Meanwhile, India reports 512 deaths and over 44,000 infections as the day caseload tops 8.6 million. The global coronavirus infections have crossed 51 million with over 1.27 million deaths. COVID-19's second wave, coupled with flu season, is devastating countries across the globe. The number of cases skyrocketing in the United States, the country's healthcare system is stretched to the limit, with over 60,000 registrations in a single day. UNICEF says Latin America is set to experience the after effects of COVID-19's devastation for many years to come. The region is one of the hardest hit by the virus, with more than 11.6 million cases and over 400,000 deaths. In Brazil, the suspension of clinical trials of Chinese vaccine is pushing the country towards a major political crisis.
What Brazilians don't need today is a non-visa that is tainted by a political war. It exists. Of course it exists. But it needs to stay contained within these walls which you media have entered.
Europe's worsening situation continues to paint a grim picture. Italy is on the verge of crossing the 1 million infection mark, with its daily deaths topping a 7-month high. With the discrepancies surrounding the vaccine in Europe have soared after Pfizer's breakthrough announcement. The continent and the world at large desperately awaits mass distribution of a vaccine, but the experts believe that the distribution of this magnitude is highly unlikely.
And I think the point here is that given the volume and velocity of vaccine distribution, regardless of whether it's 2 to 8 degrees C or at minus 80, no vaccine cold chain is ready or capable of meeting this volume of demand.
Russia has once again renewed its restrictive measures to curb the virus in the country's capital. Meanwhile, Hong Kong and Singapore have eased their restrictions and are set to allow travel to each other without quarantine. In Pakistan, 21 people have lost their lives to COVID-19 over the past 24 hours, raising the death toll to 7,021. The health ministry says 1,708 tested positive for the disease overnight. The ministry said there are over 21,000 active COVID-19 cases in the country. It added over 8,000 remain critical. The ministry said out of over 348,000 countrywide cases, more than 320,000 have recovered so far. Bihar. It said over 151,000 cases have been detected in the Sindh province, while the Punjab has reported over 107,000 cases. In Peru, violent clashes between police and protesters have erupted in the capital city of Lima. People took to streets after the impeachment of former President Martina Vizcarra. Authorities detained several protesters as tear gas whirled through the streets of Lima. A Peruvian congressman received a surprise punch in the face during an interview on live television. Ricardo Burga voted in favor for the impeachment motion. Heads of Congress Manuel Merino will serve as the interim president until July. Talking to reporters after his impeachment, Vizcarra said he feared uncertainty but will not challenge the decision. In Australia, police have apprehended 14 people, including a former childcare worker, over child abuse charges. They are accused of producing and sharing pornographic material online across Australia and beyond. Australian authorities say the investigation was carried out in collaboration with the U.S. Homeland Security Department. The federal police says 46 victims, including 16 from the same childcare center, were identified. The suspects had links to alleged offenders found in online forums in Europe, Asia, the United States, Canada, and New Zealand. This comes weeks after authorities charged 44 men over child abuse material. In Denmark, the mass culling of mink continues as the government legislates to back the call. It is aimed at preventing human contagion from a muted coronavirus strand. Authorities last week embarked on a plan to eliminate Denmark's entire population of 17 million mink. They say that the new strand of the virus present in the animals could move to humans and evade future COVID-19 vaccines. However, the minority Social Democrat government has since drawn fierce criticism from the fur industry and lawmakers. They say the order was illegal and question the science behind the decision. Meanwhile, more than 15,000 mink in the United States have died of the coronavirus since August. Authorities are keeping about a dozen farms under quarantine while they investigate the cases. In another development, British Health Minister Matt Hancock suggested the international community should rethink mink farming. Hancock earlier warned of grave consequences if the variant became widespread. Britain has introduced a quarantine policy for arrivals from Denmark. In Peru, government officials have released 1,040 baby tarcaya turtles into the Nane River in the Amazon region. The yellow-spotted river turtle has become vulnerable due to poaching and human activities. 850,000 baby turtles are expected to be released this year. Officials said the release has been made on behalf of all the ecosystems of the Pacaya Cimera National Reserve. Officials said they have freed some 2.5 million tarcayas in the last 2 years. Local media says thousands of eggs were incubated by Peruvian environmental authorities since August. Scientists say glaciers in China's Qilian Range are disappearing at a shocking rate due to global warming. This raises the prospect of long-term water shortages.
With the rising temperatures, the outlook is grim for the 2,684 glaciers in the Qilian Range. The largest glacier in the 800-kilometer mountain chain is set to further decay or even vanish by the mid-century. China Academy of Sciences reports glacier retreat across mountains was 50% faster during the 1990 to 2010 than it was in 1956 to 1990. Scientists say the 20-square-kilometer Laohogo Glacier has retreated around 450 meters since the 1950s.
When I first came here in 2005, the glacier was around that point there where the river curves around. But now, after around 15 years, the whole glacier has shrunk by more than 150 meters. The speed that this glacier has been shrinking is really shocking.
Since the 1950s, average temperatures have risen 1.5 degrees Celsius and snowfall has been minimal or not enough to compensate for the loss to the glaciers.
It does worry us, but now the climate across the entire world is warming and we cannot stop this warming process. The only thing we can do now is to minimize the impact of global warming on the glaciers.
Large sections of the Shule River on the outskirts of Dunhuang are either dry or reduced to patches of pool. Experts have warned that peak melting in Chilean may be reached by 2050, after which the glaciers will have either disappeared or shrunk considerably.
China's video sharing app TikTok says it has filed a petition against U.S. President Donald Trump's ban order. Trump, in an August 14 order, directed the app's owner, ByteDance, to divest TikTok within 90 days. The company said the order has been challenged in a U.S. appeals court as it faces imminent Thursday deadline. In a statement, TikTok said it requested a 30-day extension in ban imposition, which was ignored. The company added without an extension in hand, it has no choice but to file the petition in court to defend our right. EU regulators have opened a second investigation against e-commerce giant Amazon for its business practices. Amazon is charged with distorting competition in online retail business. In a statement, EU antitrust chief Margaret Vestager said the bloc is probing Amazon's dual role as a marketplace for merchants and rival seller. She said the action has been taken following complaints from traders about the company's practices. The charges come as the pandemic has amplified Amazon's role in the global economy, with the online sales soaring. Most stocks in the Asia-Pacific are trading in positive territory. Investors are monitoring overnight declines for the tech sector on Wall Street. In Japan, the Nikkei 225 and the Topix index have gained over 1.5%. South Korea's Kospi has added over 1%. Shares in Australia have also risen, with ASX 200 up almost 2%. The Hang Seng Index in Hong Kong has edged up fractionally, but mainland Chinese stocks are trading mixed. The Shanghai Composite has gained while the Shenzhen Composite declined. For the latest news updates, you can follow us on our social media at Indus.News.